closer to what would be seen as an outright confirmation of a conclusion, it may still be the case that there are no such things as Higgs bosons, for example. But because of the Large Hadron Collider and the apparent detection of some of these things, we're actually, now we have a stronger, more inductively strong argument than we did, say, 10 years ago or 50 years ago. So you can see how inductive arguments can be incremental. They can increase in strength. Some can be better than others. With a valid argument, it's valid or it's not. It's an all or nothing affair. Whereas inductive arguments admit matters of degree, as it were. Okay? Yeah, I'm just repeating myself with that second point. Okay. A final point here of contrast, or a couple of final points, is this. The conclusion of a valid argument never goes beyond what's contained in the premises. So to see that, think about the arguments that I was showing you towards the end of last week when I was showing you modus ponens and disjunctive syllogisms, for instance. We would say something like, if A then B, A therefore B. Well, notice that the conclusion is just B. Well, that's already contained within the premises. We're just, because it's structural, we're just reorganising the bits. And the same with either A or B, not A, therefore B. The bits are already there. So the conclusion in the deductive argument never goes beyond what's contained within the premise. Whereas inductive arguments are what we call ampliative. They sort of amplify based on the evidence they have. So we say something like, for example, there's an interesting study today about migrants' perceptions of Australia in the news. And they find that less than 3% of migrants find Australia to be a very welcoming place to those who show signs of cultural difference. Well, the claim in the argument that's made from this paper is that migrants do not find Australia to be culturally welcoming, as it were, if you're from a non-English speaking background. But actually, the inductive argument there goes from a sample. We spoke to this many migrants. 3% of them said they didn't find Australia to be a culturally welcoming place. So we amplify. We don't say, therefore, 3% of the people we spoke to. We say, all migrants, only 3% find the place to be culturally welcoming. So it's a kind of, it amplifies from a small study to a larger claim. So induction is, like I said, it goes beyond what's in the premises in that sense. Okay. A final related point, then I'll move on, is this. The addition of further premises cannot undermine the validity of a deductive argument. So if I say, if A then B, A therefore B, that's modus ponens, but then someone says, well hang on, here's another premise, C, and another one D, and another one E. It doesn't make any difference. It will never alter the conclusion because we've got if A then B, A therefore B. Chuck in anything else you want. The premises needed are there to get B as a conclusion. Whereas with inductive arguments, adding more information sometimes changes the strength or the strength of the inductive conclusion. So for instance, the migrant claim that I was just making, if I then say, but we only spoke to a small group of people from the Central Coast. You know, I live on the Central Coast, it's a very white area. So I can imagine that if you're a migrant up there, then you don't feel quite as culturally welcomed as if you live in, say, Harris Park or something like that. Is Harris Park a culturally welcoming place? Anyone know? Yeah? More culturally welcoming than Woy Woy. All right. But you get the point. So we add more information, and that changes what's going. If we find out that we've only spoken to people from a particular area, and that's limited in some way, we sort of think, actually, I mean, never mind, I'm not going to start. You add more information, it changes the nature of the conclusion. In induction. In deduction, it never happens. Okay.